Hello, and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence,
And this is Nathan Payne.
and today we're talking about Wrong Turn from 2021. Dun dun dun!
Yes. I what were you expecting going into it? Because you
Honest,
went in completely blind, didn't you?
yeah, and I purposely avoided reading anything
Hmm.
because I'm like, well, I don't know. And maybe I expected, not based on your hype because I knew you loved it, but just what I expected was, oh, it's just going to be sort of your typical teen slasher, whatever. But it
Hmm.
ended up being like I was describing it as a cross between Wolf Creek and The Hills Have Eyes, but
Hmm.
elevated with like these political and racial and religious undertones that I had no idea were going to be involved.
Right. I know this movie had so much more going on. The Hills Have Eyes comparison I like because, especially the remake for
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
that movie has a lot of like political. It has a lot to say, and that's my favorite of these kinds of movies is when you go in expecting, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a great movie, don't get
Right.
me wrong, but then you come out of it like thinking about things, and for better or worse, that I feel like there's a little bit of the power is lost at one point in the movie, but overall, oh my god.
Yeah. It's like the class, the distinctions between class and
Mhm.
you think you're going in, it's going to be like white supremacists or something, or
Right.
it's
Oh,
just
they
it's
totally set
hillbillies
it
or
up.
whatever, and they pull the rug out from
Hmm.
under everything you think. Oh,
Yes.
so good.
Yes, and the kills are creative,
Oh yeah.
but like, well, some of them are absolutely horrific. But yeah, okay. So,
So first of all, tell us about your journey with the Wrong Turn movies in general, and what have you learned through like after discovering this movie?
oh my god. Okay, so I have a lot of nostalgia for this movie or for the original Wrong Turn because it came out the year I graduated high school, and I had this friend. We're still friends, but we don't like talk anymore, really. Anyway, we used to go see like all these different horror movies and stuff, and that was a big one. And I don't know why. Maybe it was because it hit me at the age like I hadn't really gotten into like the '70s sort of slasher because it really is more of a '70s slasher than an '80s slasher,
Okay.
the original. And it's just one of those things I attached to it for some reason. And then over the years, as the sequels has come out, I maybe out of a sense of like watching a car wreck or something, like so I get excited about each new entry and like, oh my god, what are they gonna put us through next? Like the second movie is really good. I love it. But honestly, out of all six of them, the second one is the only one that I would consider like an actually like fun to watch movie. It has Henry Rollins too, and I love him.
Okay.
But yeah, coming into this new one, I was expecting something more along the lines of like how the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre took the same concept and like updated it, but it was still the same basic story. Where this is definitely like, remake in name only.
Right.
I feel like the first maybe act of the movie tricks you into feeling like that's the movie you're watching, though.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
the log rolling and the once people start dying, you're like, oh god, now it's time. And then the movie still has like a whole hour and a half left.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and it also had that feeling of I can't think of it now. That deliverance. You think
Mm-hmm.
it's going that route, and it doesn't. It's just
Yeah. Well, and when I went into this movie, the only thing that I knew was that it didn't have like inbred cannibal mounted men.
right.
And so I was like, well, what are they going to have then? And then, you're like, oh, this crazy cult in the woods. And then they're like, if you'd have left us alone.
Right.
So how did you feel about the different like characters, how they sort of responded to things?
Yeah, I mean, it was a journey because you, of course, were rooting for our presumed protagonists.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like, wait a minute, but they're the ones with the privilege and they're the ones going in and thinking that they know, everything that's normal, quote unquote,
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
otherness. Like, it's so layered. I was very surprised. And I thought, oh, it's going to go down a racist route very quickly because they did have people of color in their group. And,
Mm-hmm.
that first
The
night.
gay couple
Yep, yep.
too,
And I was like, oh
and
no, am I gonna like witness a hate crime? I hate this. I don't want this. But
mm-hmm.
no, it totally blew my mind. And oh my god, yeah, when they started getting attacked in the woods and all these different like hunting things, I'm like, oh no, oh
Yeah,
no.
like you're like, oh, these people are gonna take them and like cannibalize them and
Right.
everything. The funny thing, so I grew up, my background is very different in two different ways because my parents are like nothing alike. So, and we would spend not quite half and half with each, but like my dad lives in a very small town. It's like a hunting town. You're getting a lot more like super rural, way away from the rest of society, and like the bar they went to. Well, you're from the range.
Yes. Yep.
That all of that like is very relatable. And when these kids came in, I was like super annoyed with them too. Like it took me a while to warm up to any of them, and it wasn't until the second viewing where I started to like really any of the characters
Oh
outside
yeah.
of the main. But even her, I wasn't a huge fan of at first.
Right.
But I also grew up among people, so I also have been in their situation,
Right.
and being gay and everything, and like the scene in the hotel when they're holding hands and then he like drops his hand away, and that is a thing. Like
Yeah.
that's so how it is. And because you never know what people are going to be like, and I feel like this movie says that in a way that we've never been told before,
Right.
because they present so many different outlooks on life, and they show the things that are good and bad about all of it.
Yeah, it's true.
Like the Foundation, clearly they're bad people, like human rights violations,
Right.
up and down, like all over the place. But the point about, if you had left us alone, this wouldn't have happened. Like you're the ones trespassing on our land, and this is all very debatable from their point of view. But
Right.
but yeah, when they're sitting there, so they come. We should maybe when the boyfriend kills the guy that he perceives as having, tried to kill them and
Yes.
kill his girlfriend and stuff, and then when they're having the trial after they all get taken, that moment, like my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And this is the one part that I was maybe a little disappointed with at first, was that they did turn out to be so terrible anyway.
Right.
And like they could have maybe played with the morality a little more without having it be so black and white.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it's kind of maybe more realistic because everybody has some terrible and some good, and they explore humanity from all these different angles, because like the guy at the bar who beats up the dad, but it's to save him.
Right. Oh God. So two things about that. First of all, going back to the small town thing, I know we had like a small town bar and restaurant, on the single one in, our rural area. And I remember like when we first started going there, Mark and I, everybody would turn, and they do the thing. It like happens in movies. Everyone turns and looks.
It is a real thing.
And then I realized, oh, why they do that? It's because you assume, hey, it's probably somebody I know because it's such a small town. And so I used to take it as like, oh no, they're judging us. They don't want us here. But instead, it's like as soon as you turn your lens and flip that gaze, it's like, oh, yeah, I looked to the door too, like, hey, is this, our neighbor or something? So not all
Yeah.
rural
Yep.
people are bad. and then, and then it made me think, my God, Matthew Modine, everyone, we're mortal because he looks so old. Like, I remember, do you remember that when, well, it's that Rennie Harlan movie with Cutthroat Island.
Oh
He
my
took
God, yes.
over for Michael Douglas. And I happened to be in Finland meeting my relatives for the first time when that movie was being filmed. And Douglas, I don't know if he quit or left, but it was like on the front page of every paper. It was the biggest news because it was a Finnish
Oh my God.
director. And so then Matthew Modine took over, and I mean, he was fine, but that was like one of my biggest like visceral memories of that trip was like, Michael
Oh,
Douglas quit.
Matthew Modine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I yeah, where we grew up, same thing. A bar, and it's funny because even if you grew up in there, like you still can feel like you're walking in and everyone looks at you and you're like, oh God, I'm being judged. But
Yep.
like,
Yep.
if you're the one in your town at that bar, like you're gonna be the one looking. And you're right, it's not necessarily because they're like, oh, outsiders,
Right.
and also interesting that the good guys with the guns did end up kind of saving them at one point.
Right.
I feel like this movie just sort of hands off all of these things, various points of view, and lets you sit there and pick out,
Yeah.
your own, like, what to take away from it.
And yeah, every trope and stereotype that I went in with, I'm like, oh, this is what they're going to do. It totally turned. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is actually making me really think. And it kept blowing my mind. And I
Yeah.
was obnoxiously texting you while I was watching it. I'm like, what is going on? Like it just
It's
kept blowing my
insane.
mind.
Well, yeah, and having these curveballs constantly thrown at you, and then the ending, right? So
Yeah.
the way it ends with her going with him. First of all, I had like a, I don't know about you, but because of this movie throwing like 4 different places at you where it could satisfyingly end,
Right.
but then keeps going. That last act when she walks in the house and he's sitting at the table sent me.
I know.
Let's just say it sent me, like, fully wig snatch moment. Like, what in the hell? Like, this, what?
And it
I
still
was like,
wasn't
this is the
over.
epilogue. And it still wasn't over. And then just her arc going from this privileged, sort of goody two shoes, like ultimate final girl, like everything they did in this movie was saying something and cranked to 100.
Yeah.
To really like highlight sort of the different viewpoints people in America have right now, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
And ultimately, when you really think about it, the entire movie, beginning to end, is like a constant series of misunderstandings.
Yeah.
Some of them lead to unnecessary death. Some of them are just sort of resolved, but I love that. I love it.
I was reading that it was filmed in 2019 in Ohio, and was supposed to have a theatrical release in 2020, which of course didn't. I guess it was released for one night or one day, January of this year. I really wish, I mean, in retrospect, of course, we will never know, but I wonder what sort of response this movie would have gotten, and if it could have had that wide release and people would have been talking about it.
Yeah, a little more word of mouth, because it is unfortunate, because I think a lot of people will completely skip over because they're like, oh, Wrong Turn. Like,
yeah, another Wrong Turn movie.
I haven't seen the other 6.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, so question, have you ever been on the Appalachian Trail or in any of that large area of the country?
That part of the country, like, I've been to the coast, but I've never been in the more, like, that area. I've never been in that area at all. No.
I know my dad, like a decade ago now or whatever, was like, he became obsessed with wanted to plan a trip to the Appalachian Trail. We haven't done it, and after seeing this movie, I don't know that I want to. Not that this would
Just don't
actually
go
happen,
off
but
the trail,
yeah, it's just, oh gosh, yeah. Please don't go off the beaten path, friends. It never ends well in horror movies.
Right, and that woman says it, and you're like, she's threatening them. She's gonna kill them.
I know.
And it doesn't happen. Did you know that lady's from Minnesota?
Oh, is she?
Yes,
Nice.
she is from Minnesota, and the director is also from Minnesota.
Oh.
And what I read was that he directs commercials and stuff in Minneapolis, and my understanding is that he still is. So that's cool to know.
Oh, that is awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go to their name right now. Mike P. Nelson is the director. This was written by Alan B. McElroy, and I'm looking. Oh, and he's from Ohio. I'm looking at.
He wrote the original too.
Okay, and I see he wrote Halloween 4 and Spawn. Yes, the original, and for television, just a bunch of random things. So,
yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
That reminds me of my insane text to you this morning when I started to realize, like, on Necronomicon, the different directors and stuff, and I was like, how have I never seen this? And then
yes,
it's the director of Silent Hill and the other director of Crocodile Dundee.
So yeah, so tell the audience about this too, because I used to have this on VHS. This Jeffrey Combs movie. Tell everybody so we can make another recommendation.
Largely unrelated to Wrong Turn, but there is actually, I think, a connection. We'll talk about that. The Necronomicon, the movie from, 1993?
Yeah.
Starring Jeffrey Combs as H.P. Lovecraft, directed by a group that includes Christoph Gans, who directed Brotherhood of the Wolf and Silent Hill and a couple other great movies. And the music is by Daniel Licht, who I'm like a huge fan of, and I don't know why, for years and years, just never watched it. I've heard of it. I love Lovecraft. I love all of those people, but I read somewhere that it sucks. So I was like, I'm not going to watch it. And then today and over the last couple days, I was watching different movies about or different videos on YouTube about good Lovecraft movies, and that one was mentioned, and I've always seen it on terrible lists.
Okay.
And what they showed was clearly up my alley, and I was like, I need to be more cognizant of the fact that I like movies that a lot of people think are crap.
Yeah, and that's the thing, we keep discovering too on this podcast is the Rotten Tomatoes are rarely good for the movies we talk about, but that doesn't mean that we don't love them.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, when you get professional reviewers and even user reviewers, everybody, it's always going to be subjective.
Yeah.
You can have objective facts about, this budget was terrible, or, yeah, other than beyond that, beyond the objective fact of the budget being low, there's really nothing else that I think can be objectively bad. Everybody... Right. Well, everybody makes a movie, and every movie is somebody's dream.
Yes, I know.
Whether it's an actor or, the assistant who got to help for the first time on a film, No,
I love that, and that's why I love, even sometimes low-budget horror movies, because it's I can tell that these are, community theater actors, and bless everybody, and I love it.
Yeah. I'm not gonna ever tell somebody what to like and what not to like. I feel like if I were to review movies, of course I would give my opinion and all this stuff, but I feel like I go out of my way to try to find good things amongst a movie that I can't stand.
Yeah.
There have been very few movies where I've been like, I can't watch this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I know. I agree. No, that's
so,
good. Now we have been joined by Campbell, and hi. So do you
before we go?
Yeah.
Or talk about can I mention the Lovecraft connection?
Oh yes, please.
To Wrong Turn. Okay, so Lovecraft is known for being a racist.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. But I think beyond just being racist, he was a terrible, terrible xenophobe. And a lot of his xenophobia had to do with people living in the Appalachian Mountains, specifically.
Wow.
And the woods of up the East Coast, basically, also. So, like, we know about, like, Innsmouth and stuff, the town of the fish people. He also has a lot of stories about, like, hill people living out in the middle of nowhere. There's a story about a guy who gets lost in the woods and ends up at this man's house, and he is a man who is very old and has been living there since, like, pre-Civil War. Like, thematically, there are a lot of the same things. So watching the movie, it popped into my head. I was like, there's a lot of Lovecraft here.
That is amazing.
But
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and it's because it's not cosmic horror. Like, you don't... That's what you associate with him.
Right.
But this other stuff, like, is very much a big part of his work, too. So.
Oh, no, thank you for mentioning that, because it's so true. Wow. So, Campbell,
Okay.
what are your thoughts? You were talking about, like, when we were watching this movie, like, how the political and racial and all those implications. What do you have to say about it?
In this movie, yeah, I guess one thing I'm gonna say is, like, what would it be, like, what would the term be? How every different group is viewed as, like, a bad or good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes around a lot, because for most of the movie, one group is bad, and then at the end they're good, and then there's, like, the main group. Well, like, the main bad group at the beginning is they're bad, and then they're good, and then they're bad again. It's not really confusing. You could understand it, but I really like that part of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, they're throwing different perspectives at you.
Yeah.
Back and forth constantly. It's like ping pong.
Right. And
Yeah.
also, like, I feel like horror in particular has this ability to flip that gaze for us as audience members, because, well, think about the classic, example of feeling empathy for King Kong or Frankenstein's monster. It's like, oh, just because something looks one way on the outside or from the outside, if you know the whole story, it's like, who are the real villains?
Yeah. Well, and on the flip side of even that, what appears to be something great can have this, like, really horrific, corrupt underbelly.
Yeah.
Like the town, how at the beginning of the movie, I can't remember anyone's names.
It's fine.
The boyfriend, he goes off like, I want to live somewhere where everybody helps each other and all this stuff. And then the leader of the foundation, like, verbatim
Yeah.
says all that stuff. And you're like, maybe, they're basically kicking on socialism. Like, this doesn't work, because you're always going to end up with somebody who takes it too far.
Right.
Whether you agree with that or not, I don't necessarily have strong feelings about some of that. But yeah, they chuck stuff at you, and you're like, wow.
I know. And then even at the end, like, even when, I don't remember how much time passed, but they had been living with these people.
Sorry. 6 months?
Was it? I don't remember.
6 months or 6 weeks.
They had
or
been
something?
missing for 6 months, yeah.
Okay. So then you think, like, oh, maybe they've drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, or have been brainwashed, and, or, as it turned out, is she playing along in order to survive and hopefully wait for her chance to escape? And
Yeah.
it was, that even was, like, messing with my mind, because I'm like, wait, what?
Well, and then to have her boyfriend stay behind
Right?
was a big thing. And not just that, but oh god, I lost my train of thought. Never mind, moving on.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it was curveball after curveball, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, have you watched any of are there Blu-ray extras?
I have watched the commentary, and that's it. I haven't gotten to the rest.
What did you learn
There's
from
not
the
a whole lot.
commentary?
The commentary's a big one. The commentary was cool because the director is really... He put a lot of thought into this movie, and is very proud of it, and goes into a lot of what he was thinking, and it's a wonderful commentary to listen to. It's very positive. The main thing that really stuck out to me beyond his like the more obvious things on top. The final scene, the credits after. So originally the movie was ending with them driving off, and it ended there. But what we get in this post-credit sequence was added on like on the day.
Really?
I guess. Yeah, he was like, he's like, I got to do something different. Like, something's not working here. We got to figure something out. And so they were like, they had it crash, and the ensuing chaos, which that final post-credit sequence.
That, it blew my mind again. I was literally calling you afterwards because I'm like, I need to talk to someone.
It's such a great ending. I actually, okay, so I watched this movie like a half dozen times.
Yeah.
I watched it with my mom, and she friggin' loved it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she loves endings and stuff like that, and yeah, she was into it.
And you said your husband liked it, and that's like a big deal, right?
Yeah, Jansen liked it, and he is not... I mean, he likes horror movies, but like, we don't always blend on what we like.
Yeah.
But yeah, he really liked it a lot, and for the same reasons. Like, I think both of us at the beginning were like, wrong turn, like, it's fine, like, this is going to be a movie about people dying in the woods. And then by the end, it was like, whoa!
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been just repeating that over and over.
No, it's true. Something that also too, like why I was saying I wish that it could have come out in theaters. I feel like so many people and thoughts are represented in this movie that I feel like it could have, should have, hopefully still will reach a wide audience and get people talking and thinking, and not,
nice.
Portrayed in like one-sided stereotypical ways. And so these are the conversations we need to be having.
Yeah, they give you the stereotype and then unfold the characters.
Right.
Flaws and all. And that was another thing, the boyfriend of the girl with the glasses. The guy who was a jerk.
Yeah.
He was such a jerk. And I was like, I can't wait till he dies. But then when their friend gets crushed by the tree.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I cried. I was super embarrassed. I was not expecting that. Like, I got really emotional during that scene because I started to think about, like, oh my God, what if that was Jansen? Anyway.
Yeah.
He is like the first one to comfort him. He goes up to him, gives him a huge hug, and he's like, this, he's in heaven now. Or he's in paradise now. This is what he believed. Like, that's just his body. And it was really like, and that was something I didn't really put together until the second time I watched it. I was like, oh wait, he is actually kind of layered. Like, he's not just a terrible person.
Right.
Like, he's a hothead, but he is a good person. And
that's something I read, a criticism of this movie was that the characters weren't developed enough, and I'm like, but actually I think they kind of were, because you're seeing all of these different sides, and it's not like, oh yeah, I get all your backstory and like your hobbies in your favorites. No, it's these little moments, like a line of dialogue that reveals so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way people respond to things, and like the character I'm talking about, he is a good person. He's a hothead. He reacts to things too quickly, and he doesn't think about things, and he has a selfish streak. And I feel, watching these different characters, you kind of maybe feel a little bit of like, when I was watching him, I was like, oh God, that could potentially be me in that situation. Like, I don't like, I would have reacted the same way as him, though, as far as feeling like I was about to be cannibalized.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, speaking of relating to characters, so speaking of the woman with the glasses, if I lost my glasses, I know it's like a meme of like, oh, why can't Velma see anything when her glasses fall? Guess what? I'm that blind without my glasses. I like, if I can't find my glasses in the morning, I have to have somebody come and help me,
Oh my
it's
God.
not possible. Yeah. So if like she lost her glasses at one point, I was like, oh, I'd be dead, because I would literally not be able to find my way through the woods.
Just wear contacts on those days.
Yeah.
You're going to be lost in the wilderness getting into situations.
Yes. Or always have a backup pair. Man. Anyway, that's my real horror. Well, what else do the two of you want to say about this movie before we rank it.
Campbell, I'm curious to know if you related to anybody in this. Like, who did you feel the most connected to?
I don't know. I guess I don't know. I guess like as the movie progressed and went into different things, I connected with different people.
Sure. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's
Makes
fair.
perfect sense. Yeah. I think this movie kind of felt like, I feel like that was kind of the goal, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
For
I
us
guess
to see a little bit of ourselves in all these different
yeah.
situations. Because, yeah.
And at different points, yeah, you just connect with different people. Like at one point, I'm like, oh my gosh, like with the dads, like, oh Campbell, if you were missing and I had to go search for you, I can imagine that. You know, and then you're like, oh no, if I was stuck in the woods with my friends and this happened, and then it's like, oh no, if people came into my town, it shift.
Right. If I were a secret society of highly violent individuals, I'd be upset if someone came and murdered my brother too.
Yeah.
I had a couple different theories running throughout the movie that I don't know if they matter or whatever.
Yeah,
but
tell
like,
us.
I was like the guys who didn't speak English.
Oh yeah.
Some of these, at first, I was like, well, are they in on all of this? Like, are there people in this foundation who don't know that there is a cave full of blind people?
Right.
You know what I'm, like, are there people in this town who just go about their lives?
Yeah.
And like they have like this extra group protecting them or whatever. But the guys that spoke not English were part of it because he did have that woman in the hallway
Oh right.
on a chain. But that was something I thought about a lot because I was like, I do feel that it wouldn't be so great if people do.
Well, and that's the other thing of like it's like blind privilege. It's like you could be living your whole life in a town or in a political belief or in a religion, and if you're not looking past or deeper into the implications of what it all means or what's actually happening behind the scenes, we could all be these people. We could be sheep.
Yeah, and that's yep.
Wow. What was your other theory?
Yep. I also was trying to. I guess that's my big one was trying to figure out like how their maybe caste system might work. And they showed like some of them would leave town, and like the guys at the pool table in the bar in town.
Right.
Like, do the people in town know that they're from the Foundation? Because the people in town seem to hate the people from the Foundation.
Yeah.
So,
hey, and
there's some questions, and I personally would like to see a sequel.
I know, I agree.
And I think they could because the dad wasn't there.
Right.
And the boyfriend is still living his life.
Right.
So they could build out a pretty interesting story, I think.
I agree. Campbell, give the listeners sort of a summary of the caste system. He's been reading a book about it, so.
Oh, nice.
So the caste system is basically, I know in the book they talk about how the caste system is the U.S. in the United States is the bones of racism. And I know caste, in the book they talk about the caste systems in Nazi Germany, India, and the United States. And yeah, so basically caste is based on, it could be a lot of different things, like the color of your skin, or like how much
religion, or...
like religion, or how much money you have, or even like who your parents were. Or, like in India, there's a lot of different castes and
like royalty.
Yeah, and like a hierarchy.
Thank you for that. So yeah, it's just in case people don't know, because that's another thing. Like, look, horror movies can teach you things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because I do think they split people up into different groups. You have your privileged people you have who don't seem to know about this. Like, you can tell the characters have never really ventured outside their comfort zone.
Right.
I think very much. Yeah. And outside of the like horrific things that the Foundation did to people, there's finding the movie gives you things that I have found myself being surprised by, like agreeing with, or being like, because in your head you always want to be like, I would be the hero,
Right.
you know, I would be the fun girl, or I would be the funny one that dies in the shed. Like, that's me, let's be honest. But like you also get, you know, this movie made me like really realize that maybe I would not be the person that I would want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Like, realistically, this is maybe more how it would go. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's true. And this is that perfect horror movie situation where you put yourself in the position. It's like, oh, would I stand up for my beliefs and get my eyes burned out? Or would I fight? Or would I pretend? Like, you know, what are you willing to do?
Like, would you be the one to be like, you know, I'm giving like, I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah, like at what cost, you know?
Yeah.
So, so good.
I'll say that too. So sexual violence in movies, big turnoff for me. I hate it. There have been a couple movies where it has, like Evil Dead, for example, is a really, like, I hate that scene, and I think a lot of people do, but it's like an exploitation movie, so this movie, I was so glad dealt with it in the way it did. It's still horrific,
right?
But it's not.
But they didn't do it male gazy.
They didn't do it male gazy, and they didn't. There was no violence,
right?
Physical violence. I think, you know,
right.
Like, obviously she didn't want to be there, but for her to be the one to take sort of control,
right? No, I mentioned that too.
Made that scene a lot more palatable, because you're like, okay, she's doing this of her own volition because she knows it will save her.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I remember even saying that out loud. Yeah, as we were watching, I'm like, okay, this is the way to handle it.
There were a couple stretches of the movie where I was like, oh God, like, what are we about to see? And I was glad that never came, because I really hate that.
Yeah, no, true. Well, we have to pick something from this movie as a scale to rank it on. 0 being we hated it, 10 being it's a perfect movie. What should our scale be? Campbell, is there something memorable?
Moral equivalencies.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think about you know, the initial things like the hunting, trap kinds of things, or of course hot pokers,
hammers to the face.
Yeah. Nate, you pick something because you're our guest. No pressure.
Wrong Turn. All these things. How about Rolling Logs?
Yes,
perfect. How many rolling logs do you give Wrong Turn 2021? Campbell, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm going to give it 10.
Nice.
Ooh, you really liked it.
Nate, how many are you going to give Wrong Turn 2021?
I was obsessed with this movie. I've watched it a million times. I love it so much, but I cannot say that it's not flawed. I have a hard time giving 10s to things, so I'm going to give it a 9.
Okay.
But I freaking loved it.
Okay. I am going in between the two of you. I'm doing 9.5, so half of a rolling log. Hopefully it doesn't hit me as I'm searching for my glasses. But, you know, again, it way surpassed my expectations. And I truly was like, you know, it'll probably be enjoyable, which is fine. And I love a good teen slasher movie as much as the next horror fan. But this really changed and shaped my view of the kind of stories that can be told and how we can get people having conversations, I think. So.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. I was expecting maybe like a higher budget version of what we've been getting.
Yeah.
with like maybe like a twist on it. Was not expecting like 6 twists that
No.
actually felt satisfying. They weren't just like, we're gonna I don't know if I've talked about my feelings on M. Night Shyamalan. It's a twist.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't feel like that. I never personally was like, that is so contrived.
Yeah.
And that is make or break on those kinds of movies, I think.
I agree. We're going to take a break and we're going to listen to Meg talk about what she's been reading this week. Take it away, Meg.
Hi, Horror Rewinders. It's Meg, so that means it's time to talk about horror books. And I'm so excited to talk about today's book. Now, I'm going to call it horror adjacent because it's not, your typical slasher, gory. I mean, and I love all that, but this is a little more dignified horror. This is The Sundial by Shirley Jackson, and I'm so glad that I was prompted to read this because I've been reading a lot of Shirley Jackson the last year, as a lot of you may know, and I have not gotten to this one yet. And I had it in my library, but I just hadn't cracked the spine yet. So the reason I was prompted to read it is because I'm taking a Shirley Jackson. I'm basically watching a Shirley Jackson lecture series, read along series this month, and we were assigned The Sundial. I've read the other two novels for the class, which is The Haunting of Hill House and We've Always Lived in the Castle. I'm going to reread We've Always Lived in the Castle and record on that as well because it's probably in my top 5 favorite novels. And so you get to hear me go on about that. But right now I'm going to talk about The Sundial, which I never got to read until now. So I saw somebody on Twitter talking about it, and they got it for a gift, and they said, hey, is this a good start to Shirley Jackson? And I was kind of frank, and I said, no, not really. um, The Sundial is a great book, and I really enjoyed it, but if you are starting out with Shirley Jackson, I would definitely recommend the two novels I just said, or her short stories. Um, Her other novels, even like Hangs a Man and Bird's Nest, are good starts too. But The Sundial is all satire. And I'm glad it wasn't the first Shirley Jackson book I ever read because I think I may not have realized, sort of her intent. And, I think understanding her biography is important for me, for sort of getting into this book because, again, it's very satirical. It's definitely a haves versus have-nots type of vibe, and we are watching the haves, and we are in their lives, and they're not good characters. They're not desirable people that we'd want to spend time with. And I think for a novel that can be difficult. Shirley Jackson, of course, is the queen, so she does it deftly. But for me, I think I need characters that I really feel invested in to really feel like a closeness to the novel and feel that compelling read that I can't put down. And The Sundial is really not that, which makes it sound like I'm I'm being mean about it. But it is more of a literary, I don't want to say experiment because that's not true, but it's a challenge. It's, can you write an entire novel about people who have absolutely no self-reflection and in pure Shirley Jackson magic, she's able to do it, and she's able to make it interesting, make it intriguing. It's all centered around this feeling that they have that the world is ending and that their house is the only house that's going to be saved, that everyone else is going to die except them and their big, castle on the hill, so to speak. And it has so many other, I mean, I'm sure I could read it 3, 4, a million times, and it has so many other allegories to it and interesting side stories to it. And you could read, I mean, her dialogue, that's what gets me every time, is her dialogue is, everything that's said is so important, and I try to keep that in mind when I'm writing. So as I babble on, what I really want to tell you is that you should read The Sundial, and I think, will enjoy The Sundial, but I think you need to go into it appreciating Shirley Jackson first and who she is and what she did. Because I think if you go into it cold, you might be like, who are these horrible people and why am I reading this book? So that's kind of my feedback on that. But anyway, if you want to talk Shirley Jackson, you know I'm here and I'll talk to you about it night and day. But pretty soon you'll get a report back on We've Always Lived in the Castle because I haven't got a chance to do a recording on that yet. So again, I'm spoiler free. So just know that this book, well, it's about bad people, but Shirley Jackson is not known for her really cemented endings. So I'll just tell you that. She likes to kind of leave things a little questionable, which again, she's the queen. That's why I love her. So that's the Sundial. I read the Penguin Classic version. This is one of her last novels that she wrote, and I'm just a fan of any word she puts on paper. So read the Sundial.
So, Nate, there's one more thing I want to talk to you about before we go this week, and it's the news that potentially, probably, hopefully, Bruce Campbell was filming his cameo in Doctor Strange 2, directed by Sam Raimi, in London, like, last week. Hello!
I saw that. I was so excited. I'm excited for that movie.
I mean,
I'm still not caught up on Marvel, but I'm starting over.
Oh, we have started over too, and particularly because we watched all of WandaVision. I mean, except the last episode hasn't aired yet, and we friggin' went back and watched Age of Ultron, and we're like, okay, we didn't get this movie at the time, but now it all makes sense.
There's more. Oh, I love it. Yeah, I'm going to be watching them in chronological order because there's still, like, I kind of fell off the bandwagon a while ago, so I'm not caught up at all.
Oh, okay.
Like, at all. I'm super far behind, so I'm pretty excited to be experiencing them.
No, I
love it.
I feel jealous, like, to have that some first time viewings.
Like, I haven't even seen Black Panther.
Oh, Nate.
I know. But honestly, I haven't really watched a Marvel movie since around the time that Guardians 2 came out.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair.
I mean, that was a while ago, but
yeah.
That is about the time when I stopped going to them with people because I was like, I'm too tired to go to a movie. And then I just kind of
and that's the thing, and that's what I've said during the pandemic, like, no big Marvel movie has come out, and it's almost been like, okay, this has changed how I feel about what movies I want to support and go to, because I would have gone to every opening weekend of a blockbuster, but I mean, maybe then not really enjoyed them that much, or just been like, okay, well, whatever, because you take it for granted, and now it's like, oh, when we get this precious thing, like this show, WandaVision, for example, I know everyone's obsessed. I'm like, well, I guess I'll check it out, and well, it blew me away. So
yeah, that's fantastic.
So I'm so excited for your journey.
I've been enjoying being able to get these movies at home, like on HBO Max and stuff, but also, like, I don't know if you watched The Dark and the Wicked.
Not yet, but that's going to be an episode coming up, so I'm excited.
That's a good one. It kind of reminded me of Terrified.
Okay. Oh, and I love that movie.
In a way. Like, I would put it on the same level as far as how scary it is, which is a lot.
Okay.
So,
I'm
excited.
Wait to hear that. Well, friends, we are going to go, but don't worry, we're going to keep coming back next week with new horror movie recommendations and talk about them. So until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Thank you.
See you in the horror section.